Hello, my name is Ross Wehner. I am the founder of World Leadership School, and I'm here to I'm here to give you an introduction to what we call purpose learning. So welcome. And I want to start by giving you my Twitter and email info. If you have any questions about this presentation, please email me at ross@worldleadershipschool.com. Okay, so for the next 25 minutes or so, we're going to talk about this question: what if the purpose of school were purpose? In other words, what would school look like if we designed it around helping students explore, discover, and articulate a sense of purpose in life? Most teachers I speak to, when they talk about their proudest achievement as educators, they usually talk about alums of their school who they taught, who grew up to be purpose-driven people who are giving back to the world in some fashion. And as you will see tonight, purpose is a thing. It is something that we can clarify for ourselves. It is something that we can actually measure. And it's something that all schools can foster through deliberate strategies. So again, why, if purpose is what we most aspire to as schools, and purpose is a thing that can be fostered, why aren't we designing schools around purpose formation? I want to tell you a little bit about World Leadership School. Our mission is to partner with K through 12 schools to reimagine learning and create next generation leaders. We do this by working with schools to take students out into the world on immersion programs in the United States and all three on Africa, Latin America, and Asia. During COVID, we have been doing some domestic trips. We've also been doing lots of virtual immersions. The other thing we do is we coach teachers to bring purpose back into school. And that's what really we'll be talking about tonight. All right, so I'm going to start with the Committee of 10. Most people have heard of the so-called factory model of school. But where did it come from? It turns out that this group of 10 white men in 1892 sat down to standardize high school. They were funded by the leading industrialists of the day, people like J.P. Morgan, Andrew Carnegie, and Vanderbilt, et cetera. And their job was to standardize high school in order to create the factory workforce that America needed at that time. Now, it was this group that invented Carnegie units, which we still use in college transcripts today that bear Andrew Carnegie's name. This group also decided to divide our school day into 8 50-minute periods separated by bells, like a factory, and to divide knowledge into subjects like chemistry, physics, biology, and then to divide our teachers into those same topics. This group also decided to separate children by grade, by age, what we call now the age-graded classroom. Now, this is what most adults today believe that this is what school just simply is, because it's the way that they experienced it as children themselves. But the fact is that this factory model of school is actually an invention that was funded by the leading industrialists of the day to serve the needs of America's growing economy. And guess what? It worked incredibly well at what it was designed to do. It was designed to increase our high school graduation from around 6% in 1900. And it peaked at around 80% in 1970, and it's stayed flat ever since. So 2020 happens. The COVID-19 has produced the largest disruption in the history of school. Black Lives Matter triggered a massive societal global awareness about racial injustice, not only in our society, but in our schools. These forces combined created cracks in this industrial model and actually blew them wide open. Now, I talk about 2020 as a huge storm that really impacted everyone in some way, but we were all in different boats. So same storm, different boats. Each of us had our unique human journey through this, and there was learning loss, there was crisis, there was trauma. I consider teachers to have been frontline workers in 2020 that deserve to be celebrated for being heroes. So despite the crisis and learning loss, there's also huge opportunity in this moment, because it's not only COVID. What's happening is we're having a whole bunch of forces that are converging in this moment to what I hope will force a change in schools. Evolutionary biologists talk about this idea of punctuated equilibrium. And it's this idea that species in the fossil record actually change very, very quickly. And then they enter long periods of stasis in which they don't change at all. And then something else happens. Like usually for evolutionary biology, it's an event like an asteroid strikes the Earth or climate change or an ice age or something like that. In this case with schools, I think 1892 was a period of, the Committee of 10 was a period of punctuated equilibrium, of rapid change in schools. Then we had 120-year stasis. And now I think 2020 is a new moment of what I hope will be rapid change in schools, because it's not only the pandemic, it's not only growing awareness of racial injustice, it is also the worst stress epidemic for young people recorded in modern history. It is 20 years of medical findings from positive psychology, which is the study of purpose and meaning and happiness. And it's also the rise of technology and a complete new economy that demands completely new things from students. So there's a lot of forces converging. It's like a perfect storm of forces. One of the really, this storm has produced some really interesting opportunity moments. This is a Black Lives Matter protest this spring, and Reverend Al Sharpton, at the funeral of George Floyd, when he looked out at the sea of white protesters, he said, truly, this is a new season. He sees real opportunity in this moment. Another huge thing which I celebrated was University of California, the largest university system in the world, unanimously voted to suspend the ACT and SAT tests. And I don't think they're going back. This is a huge blow for standardized testing. What we have seen over and over again with COVID is that positive trends that have been building for decades, like greater attention to diversity and equity, a move away from standardized tests, more concern about social and emotional learning, greater educational technology, more flexibility around schedules. All these trends happen suddenly overnight. And now the question is, what is the next iteration of school going to look like? So why do I return to this Committee of 10? Because I think that now we are talking about a new Committee of 10 that is largely invisible, but is investing billions of dollars into the future of education. This is a new group of 10 white men that are Mark Zuckerberg, Bill Gates, the people behind Google, Reed Hastings of Netflix, Jeff Bezos. They are spending fortunes on school reform. And the technology foundations, and I know this because I actually am a co-founder of a nonprofit that receives funding from technology foundations. They are, in general, they're funding, if you look at a general pattern, they are funding a shift in education from content to skills. And that is definitely positive. But what I have learned is that competency-based learning can be just as meaningless as content-based learning if we don't design the system around the actual needs of our students. So the question again is, what if the purpose of school were purpose? This question is truly about justice and equity in society. It's about building schools for our students and for the best interest of our society, and taking into consideration certainly what the new technology workforce needs, but thinking about the needs of our students and our society first. So purpose. What is purpose? This is the definition of purpose put forward by Bill Damon at Stanford, which is generally accepted by researchers today. Purpose is a stable intention that is meaningful to self. In other words, it's a core of meaning on the inside that is beneficial to the world on the outside, okay? So you can think of this as two great human journeys. One is a journey on the inside to understand who am I, what are my gifts, what's my story? And the other journey is a journey to the outside. How do I connect and contribute to the world? Now, interestingly, Stanford also says it's a stable thing, that it doesn't change throughout our lives. Students, and we have multiple passions throughout our life, but if you do the hard work of clarifying your purpose, people usually end up seeing that there's a golden thread or pattern, a narrative that runs through your life. And once they see that pattern, they can clarify gifts, the meaning on the inside, and impact, the action on the outside, and build that into a stable sense of purpose that not only helps you understand your past, but helps you also navigate your future. Now, purpose does not have to be a noble mission, like saving the world from climate change. It can be very simple and abstract, like a child who uses humor to light up the world, and maybe he or she practices stand-up comedy on Wednesday nights, or a student who tutors a sibling with a learning disorder. And it's all about caring for others so they can overcome obstacles. So I want to talk a little bit about the benefits of purpose. These are very well studied now with thousands of medical studies from the positive psychology movement. People with a sense of purpose live on average 4 years longer. They suffer from fewer heart attacks and strokes. They heal faster. They report more happiness, better relationships, reduced stress. Many of these same benefits are also accrued to students with two really important kickers. Students that are purposeful are, generally speaking, deeper learners and much better stress managers. And we're going to explore why here in a minute. So let's just look at this mental health crisis that I mentioned today. This is a study, this is a survey of 100,000 students that said that the three things that students most said about their high school experience was tired, stressed, and bored. Nearly 1 in 3 adolescents today will qualify for an anxiety disorder by the age of 18. Suicide visits to the ER for suicide have tripled between 2008 and 2015. Something is wrong. So Bill Damon at Stanford Center for Adolescence, who's really sort of a leading purpose researcher, has said, the problem growing up today is not stress, it's meaninglessness. And in the quest to prove that, Damon and his team of researchers created this thing called the Youth Purpose Study, which is a statistical instrument for measuring purpose in young people. They have given this test to over 10,000 students, and it's been repeated in other countries, and the results are remarkably stable. Here's what they found out. So let me just tell you a little bit about this survey first. It's a 45-minute survey between a researcher and a student in which the word purpose is not even mentioned once. Instead, they ask questions like, if you had a magic wand, how might you change the world? How do you spend your free time? What is a community that you belong to, and how do you contribute to it, etc. So what they discovered is that purposeful students are relatively rare. They're about 1 in 5 students. These are students, again, that have meaning and dreams and identity on the inside that connect to an action on the outside that benefits something larger than themselves. And again, it can be very simple. It does not have to be mission driven. What they did find is that actually in high school today, goal-driven students are about a quarter. These are students who they also call these dabblers. Goal-driven students are students who generally work very hard and are very focused on achievement, getting good grades, performing well at sports. They're called dabblers though because they pursue lots of things, but nothing really sticks. Like they have a lot of work ethic and drive, but at the end of the day, it's not backed by meaning. So they sort of dabble around. Now the dreamers are a different thing altogether. The dreamers are exactly the opposite. They have that meaning on the inside, but they're not making it happen on the outside. So they're all in inner meaning, but no outer action. Disengaged students are students that have neither dreams nor goals, sadly. So when I show this data to teachers, the reaction I often get is that teachers immediately think of their classes, and they say to me, look, I know exactly who the students in my class are. I know who the dreamers are, who are the goal-driven kids, purpose-driven, disengaged, etc. Lyndon Nathan, a friend who's the founder of the Boston Arts Academy, described purposeful kids as having, quote, what he calls light behind the eyes. I love that phrase because it gets at the brightness and illumination that kids with purpose have. They are joyful, driven, they get lost in their work, they take on huge projects, and they manage stress more effectively than goal-driven students or dreamers. They are resilient, they are engaged learners and caring human beings. and they totally make our schools work. Now, what's interesting about these students is how they experience stress. The purpose-driven students, as I mentioned, are better stress managers, and researchers believe it's because they have this like framework of meaning. So as they navigate high school, for instance, they tend to attach to things. They tend to sort of filter things through their framework of meaning. And when these students are given voice and choice, they can do some pretty amazing things. Interestingly, purpose-driven kids will oftentimes take on actually more work than goal-driven students and still manage to thrive. Now, goal-driven students are very hard workers, and at some point in the middle of high school, they will stop, typically, and they will start asking themselves, why am I working this hard? What is it all about? Okay, the dreamers are also experiencing negative stress, but they're asking a different question. They're asking, why can't I find what's meaningful to me in my school or in my life? What is this all about? And the disengaged students are asking both these questions at the same time. Now, purpose-driven kids certainly have meltdowns like every adolescence, but in general, stress for purpose-driven students becomes a productive and invigorating force. That's why researchers call it eustress or good stress. So as I've studied purpose, the epiphany that I've made is that purpose is not a skill alongside empathy and grit and collaboration. It is the skill. It is the capstone skill from which all others flow. We don't have time tonight to get into the philosophical history of purpose, which really begins with Aristotle and flows through the existentialists, Viktor Frankl, a Holocaust survivor who really is the father of the purpose moment. But what these philosophers and the positive psychology movement have taught us is that purpose is no longer optional in our time. It is a survival skill. Purpose grounds us. We teachers, and definitely our students, need purpose more than ever to navigate uncertainty and change. Now, I'm about to describe a purpose clarification process that's part of purpose learning. And I learned this by working with corporate executives over 7 years, taking corporate executives to Tanzania for a week-long purpose boot camp. I worked alongside some of the most famous executive coaches in the United States today in this program. And it's interesting that corporations have used positive psychology to develop purpose-driven leaders. And my question has always been, why aren't schools doing this work with our students? Okay, so this is purpose learning as we define it at World Leadership School. It's taken John Dewey's idea of head, heart, hands learning, which is also the foundation for Waldorf schools, and it's reinterpreted it for our time. Purpose learning is the idea that learning has to be more than thinking. Traditional learning is oftentimes focused on helping students develop content knowledge and develop really important cognitive skills like critical reasoning. Purpose learning takes this a step further. It combines rich forms of thinking, which I liken to like a rich liberal arts education, with feeling. In other words, who am I? What are my lenses and identities on the world? How do I regulate emotions? How do I relate to others via empathy and perspective taking? And finally, what are my gifts? And ultimately, I would hope by high school, what is my sense of purpose? Learning as doing is all about getting students out into the world. It's project-based learning. It is community engagement, global education, internships and mentorships, et cetera, making and creating. And when we can have learning as thinking, feeling, doing at the same time, at the intersection of those three domains, students have a chance to explore purpose. We think this frame of purpose learning integrates many of the impulses for education reform today in the world, from diversity, equity, and inclusion to social and emotional learning, to project-based learning, et cetera. I should say that, by taking thinking and combining it with feeling and doing, I think what you end up getting a very rich liberal arts experience. For anyone who's gotten a liberal arts degree from a small liberal arts college, you'll understand what I'm talking about, where sort of who I am and what I can do with my knowledge is a key part of my thinking. So thinking, feeling, and doing. All right, I want to talk a little bit about a process of purpose clarification and designing curriculum around for purpose learning. In the context of our K through 12 Purpose Summit, I'm really excited about this annual event. It happens each year in October in Boulder, Colorado. This year, in 2021, was going to be a virtual journey from January to April, which I'm really excited about. So purpose clarification for teachers, what I realized about when I worked with corporate executives, I realized that only about 30% of the Fortune 50 executives that I coached, and I coached about 120 executives, had a coachable sense of purpose. In other words, these execs definitely had the work ethic, but could I help them connect with a sense of meaning, and could I help them connect their work ethic to their meaning to step into that purposeful quadrant? And I wasn't, only in 30% of the cases. Now with teachers, I've had a totally different experience. I find that 99% of all teachers have an innate, deep sense of purpose, but very few teachers can tell you what their purpose is, or tell you stories around it, or make it come alive in a classroom in a way that allows students to see them as a real human in front of them. And that, I think, is what education is calling us to do as educators moving forward. So the purpose clarification process, we begin with this activity called calling cards, which is a really actually fun activity where you put words to your natural gifts. So much of the work around purpose clarification is turning off our thinking brain and allowing us to feel things and see things that we haven't seen about ourselves before. So calling cards helps us understand our gifts. We then build life maps where we look at the groove moments, the moments in our life where we're like, yes, that's exactly what I was meant to be doing. And the growth moments when we stumbled or had a hardship and we learned something. We create these life maps, and then we choose stories to share with a coach, with a listening partner. And in a very carefully curated paired activity called Golden Thread, that listening partner will listen to your stories and help you see that golden thread. And we compare the gift that you identified in calling cards with the impact that your partner helps you identify in Golden Thread, and we put those together into a purpose statement. So it's like gift plus impact equals purpose. My purpose statement is, I forge paths so that goodness prevails. And I have done this as a child. I like to find trails in the woods. As a young adult, I was a journalist after college in Latin America. I love to break news stories. In my middle age, I have been a social entrepreneur that started both World Leadership School and nonprofit Teach United. As a parent, as a spouse, I forge paths. And at the end of the day, I really do believe that you're either part of the solution or you're part of the problem, as Martin Luther King said. And I want the good people to win. And so for me, it's very important in my work that I'm forging paths and that I'm creating goodness. That's what my purpose is. So I help anyone that comes to this Purpose Summit reach that level of awareness about their purpose, and then understand how to bring that purpose alive in their classroom, in their daily life. So one of the things we do at the end, and this is really one of the most rewarding things, is you build a purpose map. Each person builds a purpose map. They put that purpose statement at the very center of the map, and that's the why. And a lot of this work, by the way, comes from Simon Sinek, who's a executive coach in the corporate world. The next concentric circle is the how, right? So what's our sounding board? Who are the people that I'm going to be checking in with every quarter, who help me stay human, who ground me, who keep me accountable? What are my daily practices that help me stay centered? Meditation, or walking the dog, or reading books at night. What are the values that I need in order to thrive within an organization? What are some goals that I'm going to set that are not like personal goals, but are purpose goals, something that relate to my sense of purpose? And finally, what are some of the next steps that I'm going to do? And finally, in the what, the very outer circle, which is the what, we actually take an inventory of our time and our energy. And we look at all the ways in which we spend our time and energy throughout the day. And we understand like what percentage of our day is actually lived purposefully. And then we look at that and we try to delete, delegate, or modify knowing that we're never going to be purpose-driven all day long, but we can probably do more than 10% a day. We can probably do 40 or 50%. And that really makes a big difference in how we experience life. Okay, great. So this is our planning for purpose. This is our planning, sorry, I was just checking to see if I was recording. This is our planning for purpose document. This is actually a document that we use to help our participants build curriculum with thinking, feeling, and doing. And in the Purpose Summit, we do easy hacks, which are small things that we do in teams, things that we can act immediately. And this year, we'll actually go into our classrooms and do it, come back, get feedback. We'll have one-on-one coaching sessions with coaches. And then at the end of the summit, we do these moonshots, much bigger, much more ambitious ideas. And again, lots of group feedback, lots of coaching, etc. Okay. So back to purpose learning, the idea of learning as thinking and feeling and doing. So we see thinking, feeling, doing in a number of schools that traditionally come to our Purpose Summit. This is Fountain Valley School. In one of our Purpose Summits, they developed their capstone program. This is Oakwood School in Los Angeles that has this incredible community engagement program. Fu Trenchi is the director there. And then finally, Winchester Thurston, which was with us last year, they have this place-based learning program. So capstone, community engagement, place-based learning, all really powerful examples of learning as doing. We also last year and this year as well, we'll have a school, Valor Collegiate School, which is a charter school, actually a network of charter schools in Nashville, Tennessee. And one of their co-founders, Darren Dixon, came to our summit and has become a good friend. And their mission is to inspire our diverse community to live inspired, purposeful lives. And they have created what I believe is kind of the gold standard for advisory programs, at least for a middle school, which is all about, it's a scaffolded approach for helping students develop, be vulnerable, explore identity, and ultimately articulate a sense of purpose. And they use this model called Compass, which you'll see is very much like thinking, feeling, doing. I've got a sharp mind at the top, aligned actions, big heart. So it's like thinking, doing, and feeling, right? And then noble purpose is like their fourth dimension. So I'd love to show this video. I am going to make sure this is properly optimized. I'm going to show from about, I'm going to show 4 minutes of this video. I promise you this will be worth it. And if you get through this without shedding a tear, you are a stronger person than I am. So let's see if I can get to the
Let's take 3 deep, intentional breaths together. And exhale. And then when you're ready, you can go ahead and bring your attention back to circle. We'll start with our check-in. So remember.
Sorry, I'm actually just gonna forward us along. Okay, it's not letting me. Okay, there we go. All right, here we go.
They have pure hearts. They want to share how they're feeling. But in most traditional schools, they don't have the opportunity to connect with others. It's just that people don't ask them to do that as much. And Valor Circle gives them a chance to do that.
One day when I was sad at lunch, you rubbed my back and I was feeling down and you showed caring to me.
Roy Wash is a 5th grader, so he's been at Valor for almost 2 months now. And Roy Wash is usually like a pretty shy kid, so this work has kind of propelled him forward and given him the opportunity to grow.
Edwin, I would like to appreciate you because you always play with me and talk with me. And this shows me that you value friendship And this affects our relationship because we can play together more and hang out more.
And what we know about young kids, that you spend the time and develop the trust and the capacities on the social and emotional side so that kids are in a space to optimally learn.
Since the first day of school, we were best friends, same for re-wash, and this affects our relationship because we keep being friends, the three of us.
Yep, go ahead and stand up, buddy.
Dear Mr. Wilson, I am sorry for being funny in class. Please forgive me. I did not mean to make you mad. I will not do this again.
At Valor, we believe it's important not to leave any community member behind. In Circle, we discover when someone is going through a rough time, and it gives us an opportunity to offer that person support. Sadiq, I wasn't mad the other day when we had the disruptions in class, but I do accept your apology for calling out and for disrupting class. Please know that I really value our friendship, and I don't want you to ever feel worried. I think you're an amazing young man, and I'm really lucky to be your teacher. One of Valor's commitments is I commit to walking my talk. So if we're going to ask our students to participate in circles, to be vulnerable, to share, to leave their comfort zones and take risks, then we as a staff must also do the same.
Thanks for coming to Circle. Just go ahead and check your hands as we get settled in. You know, this is our chance to come together and check in on relationships.
I think some of you know, or I've shared just because of recent absences for being ill, that I do have lupus, which has just been terrifying. And I was told yesterday to ask for help here.
Circle allows individuals like myself, a Black, African-American man, to get to a point to where I don't have to live out a stereotype. I don't have to be cold and hard and callous. I just want to make a commitment to you that I'm here, and I just want to be present. And I don't even know what that looks like, but I appreciate you so much. And you're a model of what not only Circle, but what teaching looks like.
Thank you. Appreciate you.
When we're most vulnerable is when learning takes place. And sometimes in our vulnerability, there is sometimes a pressure applied. And it's through that pressure that we gain the momentum and we gain the muscle that we need to power through. I think.
Okay, great.
One, being at.
All right. Well, I'm going to sort of wrap up now. I may be over my time. I apologize, but it's been fun to talk about Introduction to Purpose Learning, and I hope that you're in touch with us. There's so much more to talk about, really. The last thing I'll just mention is that, you know, if you could take, there are schools that do thinking really, really well and do really interesting, purposeful thinking with all kinds of great metacognitive techniques. There are schools that do learning as doing very well, expeditionary schools, or schools that do experiential ed, or really focus on project-based learning. There are schools like Valor that do this learning as feeling well. What would happen if we could create schools that did all three of these things well simultaneously? What about classes in which there were big moments in every class of thinking, feeling, and doing? What would happen? I think that we would push our students towards greater purpose. Like, I'm not saying that we're going to get 100% of purposeful students by high school, but I know we can do better than 20%. I think at a very minimum by 8th grade, every student should have a decent sense of who they are. What is their identity or identities in the world? What are their gifts? And what are some of the things they're interested in? And at the same way, they should already know how they connect. What are ways in which that they can connect to their community and contribute, et cetera. if we can do this for students, I'm sure that we can put them on a path to navigate their future. If you can think about the quadrant we showed before of purpose-driven kids, students, goal-driven, dreamers, etc., the challenge really is for the goal-driven students, they have the work ethic, they have the drive, but we need to hitch that work ethic to something meaningful inside of them, okay? And when that happens, we can push those goal-driven students into the purpose quadrant. The dreamers have another issue. They have the meaning on the inside. We have to help them take action. We have to help them be resilient and to find ways to step out and to find ways to bring their inner meaning alive in their learning and in their life. And for the disengaged students, it's about coaching them to oftentimes to take trauma and suffering, things that have been hard in their lives. And as Viktor Frankl taught us in Man's Search for Meaning, which is a very meaningful book if you haven't read it, to turn that suffering into something that instead of causing them to disengage, that causes them to find meaning and causes them to move forward in life. Now, the stakes for doing this are really high. Recent neuroscience has really proven this. This is the last thing I'll say. A couple of months ago, actually a year ago, I was at the University of Southern California, and I interviewed this neuroscientist named Helen Immordino-Yang, who's really becoming quite famous for her work. And she is advancing the primacy of emotions for learning. And truly, she says, it is literally neurobiologically impossible to build memories, engage complex thoughts, or make meaningful decisions without emotions. Put succinctly, we only think deeply about things we care about. Now, Dr. Yang and her team have done these brain scans of students during rote learning. And what they find is that during rote learning, the frontal cortex, our modern brain, is lit up pretty well. That's our slow brain. That's the last brain to be developed. But in deeper learning, what they find is that this cortex, this thinking brain, connects to our fast brain, our emotional primitive limbic brain, the whole limbic system. And we see that there's connections throughout the entire brain. So literally what's happening there in deep learning is students are combining thinking with feeling. And that is deep learning. We have banished emotions from school for so long. We have thought that emotions somehow interfere with clear thinking. As Dr. Yang teaches us, it's exactly the opposite. We cannot have complex memories, thoughts, or make meaningful decisions without feeling. And this, of course, proves what social scientists have been saying for some time, like Brene Brown. Vulnerability is the birthplace of innovation, right? And she compares a classroom to a room of turtles, right? And the challenge of a teacher today is to get those kids to come out of their shells, to take their emotional armor off. And that, we cannot give away what we don't own. If teachers have not done the hard work of sort of clarifying who they are and how they connect to the world, and they can't come alive with their humanity in class, they can't create that safe environment for students to come out of their shells. Parker Palmer technique, Parker Palmer says, is what teachers use until the real teacher shows up. I believe that very, very much. Again, my Twitter is Ross Wehner, and email is ross@worldleadershipschool.com. Would love to hear from you, and hope to see you at some point soon.